From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Welcome to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer. Lead exposure might sound like something from the past, something that has already been taken care of, but here in Louisville, it's still affecting families, and often they might not even know it. So how big is the problem? Well, who's most at risk, and what's being done to protect people? To help us answer these questions, we're joined by Dr. Brian Guinn, a public health epidemiology professor at the University of Louisville and a lead poisoning researcher. Dr. Guinn teaches epidemiology and studies how environmental lead exposure impacts health and behavior, with a focus on topsoil contamination and at-risk communities in Louisville. Brian, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we're also joined by Patrick Rich, Executive Administrator of the Environmental Health and Preparedness Division at Louisville Metro Public Health and Wellness. Patrick has over 15 years of experience with the city, including leading roles in the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program and the now suspended Lead Rental Registry. Patrick, thanks for joining us on Track.
Thank you for having me.
So where does lead tend to show up in Louisville? What kinds of places and spaces are really the biggest sources of exposure here? I'll start with you, Patrick.
Lead is the biggest problem right now in lead in the city is in our antiquated buildings with historical lead paint. So that lead paint has been put on mostly on the outside of a lot of houses and on those high durable surfaces, doors, door jambs, and such, and those are where we're finding the most lead that's breaking down and contaminating and getting people sick.
Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, any home built before 1950 is going to be at increased risk for finding remnant lead paint and also lead contaminated topsoil. So we have entire neighborhoods built before 1950. So a lot of those homes would be at risk for remnant lead paint.
So before 1950 is kind of where we're looking at for these homes, which Louisville has a lot of. And I was told kind of when I was looking at homes that lead wasn't harmful unless it was chipping or flaking actively. I mean, is that true? Is lead dangerous because it's simply present in a home, or does it have to be disturbed in some way to be harmful? Dr. Guinn, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a hazard whether or not it's chipping or peeling. Just like a loaded gun under the bed is a hazard whether or not someone's holding it. So the problem is it can still be bioavailable even if it's not chipping and peeling. If you put your hand on it and pull your hand off, you're still pulling some lead off with that, even if you can't see it. So if you have lead there, unless it's covered up, it's going to be a hazard and put you at increased risk for some negative health outcomes.
And by covered up, you mean I've seen some things where like they can paint over it in a certain way. Like is that protective enough?
It can be. So certainly using latex paint to cover over old lead paint is good. For wood-sided homes in Louisville, having vinyl siding that you can just put over that wood paneling is probably better than covering it up with latex paint. But of course, that can be cost prohibitive for a lot of people.
Patrick, I want to turn to you about Louisville's award-winning water system. Is that enough to protect us from lead, or can lead still get into our tap water?
It can still get in the tap water at certain points. You're going to have most of the buildings in Louisville, the lead lines have been replaced that the water company has, but the homes can still have some lead in the house because they don't have control over everyone's homes. They do have a program now where they're reaching out, trying to get pictures of everybody's pipes, get eyes on them to see what they look like, and see if they do have lead or not. And some of the homes as well, if they have cast iron, they also will have the solder, and the solder will have the lead. Now, the water company does have a process where they add stuff to the water that keeps it from coming off of the pipes into the drinking water. So it's a very low level of risk that we're not super concerned with, but we are still finding it out there.
So if you have a cast iron pipe in your home, it's possible that there's some lead, but because of what's put in the water system, it's not a huge concern?
Yes.
Okay. That's good to hear
Yeah.
because I have one of those. But okay, so like you both said, like so there's exposure to this through the home, through the paint in the home, through water, through topsoil. Um, of course, with water, you're ingesting it is a way to get exposed. But how does soil exposure work for lead, Dr. Guinn? I'll talk to you on that.
Yeah, so topsoil is a primary constituent of house dust. So if you're outside in your yard cutting the grass or playing, you're going to track that in your house. Even if you take your shoes off, you're tracking some amount of soil into your house. That gets ground up and becomes part of the house dust. That puts little kids inside the home at risk that are down crawling around, putting their hands in their mouth, which is completely normal behavior. In fact, that hand to mouth behavior peaks around 24 months of age. And that's how little kids learn to explore their environment and to just grow as people. So kids in the home get exposed to lead from the environment because it's tracked in the house. If you're outside of the house playing in the yard, of course, there's direct exposure from just hand to mouth behaviors there, or gardening, or if it's dusty, you could even inhale some of that lead. So it does present as probably the number 2 source of lead in people, behind paint is the topsoil.
Okay. Are there any other ways that we're missing that you can get lead exposure, especially in Louisville? Or are those the water, the topsoil, and paint?
Yeah, paint and topsoil are considered the 2 primary sources of lead exposure, not just in Louisville, but in the United States.
Patrick, I saw you.
Yeah, there's a couple other ways that we have found it in the past, as reported to the health department. Sometimes it will be you'll see recalls for lead in food, which comes from somewhere else. There was a cinnamon recall last year where it was in some of the cinnamon that was coming in the applesauce pouches and mixed in. And then there's always the option of bringing in jewelry and stuff that's not from somewhere that's unregulated like we have. We have lots of regulations here to make sure the lead's not used in coverings for toys or for dressers and stuff like that. And a lot of that stuff, if it's bought overseas and they don't have the same regulations we do, it is a danger of having some lead used in it. But that's generally going to be either in a food product, a makeup product, or a paint used for furniture.
So how does lead poisoning work? We talked about how it gets in our bodies. It's sort of exposure, ingestion seems to be the main way. But what happens essentially when you get lead poisoning? Dr. Guinn, sorry.
Sure, yeah. No, it's a great question. Lead mimics calcium in the body. So your body has a real hard time telling the difference between lead and calcium. And your body needs calcium to survive. All of your organs essentially need calcium. So anywhere calcium can go, lead can go. So once it gets in the body, it can be directly toxic or indirectly toxic. And the main thing I'm concerned about, and most people in this space are concerned about, is how it impacts the brains for developing children. So because lead mimics calcium, it can disrupt the calcium kinetics of the neurons developing and actually destroy brain tissue. So kids that have been exposed early in life are shown to have smaller brains in adulthood. And we think that's a direct reflection of the neurotoxicity of lead. Lead is known as an environmental neurotoxicant. Not only that, it can damage the kidneys. So we see kids that are exposed early in life, throughout life, will grow up and have some sort of renal dysfunction potentially, which can cause hypertension and all kinds of other issues that are associated with normal kidney functioning. So lead is poisonous in a number of ways, both direct and indirect.
So is all lead exposure dangerous, or is there a safe threshold when we're talking about these issues?
No, there's no safe threshold for lead in the body. In fact, the CDC still contends that there's no safe level of lead in the body. If you do a comprehensive metabolic panel and look at what's in your blood, lead's not even line listed there because there should be no lead in the body. There's no known biological function for lead in the body.
And Patrick, I'm going to say, does lead affect everyone the same way, or some groups more vulnerable? I know we've been talking about children being very susceptible to this.
It can affect everyone. It's just a matter of how long-term those effects are going to be, really based on your age. Obviously, if you're a child and you are developing, you're still building brain mass and you're still growing, you're going to absorb a lot more, but it's going to cause much more long-term effects. Now, a child will absorb a whole lot more of the lead that they take in than an adult will. An adult will express it either through normal means of using the restroom, where a child will actually hold on to a lot more. So we do focus a lot on the children because that's where it's going to cause more lifelong problems. We have been trying to ramp up our focus on pregnant people as well. Because it will go straight through the umbilical cord into the baby. And at that point, they're really starting a lifelong battle before they're even born against this. So we're really focusing on that right now. And if you're an adult and you are taking in lead from somewhere, it can absolutely affect, because it's going to affect your body. It's going to affect your bones. It's going to affect your kidneys, your liver. It's going to affect all those things. And yes, you're an adult. You're not going to notice it as much as the thing when adults get poisoned. For the most part, you've already developed. You've already got your brain matter's already filled up. So you're just not going to notice it as much. It's going to be a much more underlying lurking thing where it's just kind of like, oh, well, maybe I've forgetting things a little more, or maybe something like that's happening. So it is possible to get it for adults. We always have been focusing on children and pregnant people because that's where it's going to have the most long-term effects. And that's where if we can get it early, hopefully we can tackle that and prevent someone from having a lifelong disability.
What are some of the signs you or someone you might know might have lead poisoning?
What we generally look for, especially in children, is learning developments. That's always hard with children because you go to take your child to the pediatrician and they have a little list of things they check of head size. And when they're young, they're not talking yet and you can't really tell. So the signs can be anything from learning disabilities, from a delayed motor function, from delayed vocal function, to none at all. It just really depends on what part of the brain it's affecting at the time. So that's why we recommend everybody get their children tested regularly.
And then, Dr. Guinn, if you do test positive for lead poisoning, are there any treatment options?
There are treatment options, but it depends on how high your blood lead level is. If it's like 50 or 60, I think greater than 45, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, potentially you'll be treated with chelation therapy, or that would be an option to pull the lead out of your body. If it's less than that, usually it's the treatment will be to identify the source of lead and remove that from the environment. But what I see in the database is kids being exposed at low levels for long periods of time and never being identified or treated for that low level lead poisoning.
Do you think in Louisville it's so high because it's mostly about like the homes, or what's the root cause, Dr. Guinn?
I think it's because we have thousands of homes built before 1950 that were wood-sided homes covered in lead paint, and that lead persists. The soil acts as a sink for the lead. It's not going anywhere for the next 200 years, and it's just in the environment. I always tell people, if you put me in downtown Louisville and point me in any direction, I will find you lead paint or lead contaminated topsoil within 100 yards, almost guaranteed. I see it all the time. So it was just the release of lead in the 20th century from lead paint and leaded gasoline has contaminated large parts of our older neighborhoods.
You're listening to On Track. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, it's Aisha Jaffer, host of On Track. As a fan of the show, you may be wondering how you can help support this hyper-local podcast that focuses on topics and conversations that affect us and our community. One of the best ways is by donating at lpm.org or by becoming a sponsor of On Track. We work hard to create diverse and engaging conversations featuring guests from Louisville and Southern Indiana. To learn how your business can sponsor On Track, contact Tracy Karam at tkaram@lpm.org. It's a meaningful way to support both the show and the community while aligning your brand with important local conversations. Thank you.
Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
Welcome back to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and we are talking about the prevalence of lead poisoning here in Louisville with Dr. Brian Guinn, a public health epidemiology professor at the University of Louisville, and Patrick Rich, the executive administrator of the Environmental Health and Preparedness Division at Louisville Metro Public Health and Wellness. Patrick, where in Louisville geographically or neighborhood-wise are lead risks most prevalent? I know we talked that it's everywhere, but where is it most concentrated, or is it?
It's everywhere. It is most concentrated, we found, in obviously the older homes. As Dr. Guinn said, anything built before 1950 is going to be most likely, but lead paint wasn't outlawed and really stopped being used until 1978. So you're going to have anywhere that has had a paint job on their house in the past 100 years as being a possibility. But we do see the highest rates of positive elevated blood lead levels in people in the West End.
So I do want to ask about that. Like, how does lead exposure intersect with issues like redlining, poverty, education, food deserts, or even violence? And that might even be a separate topic.
Yes, as far as the redlining goes, we've discussed this in several researches in the past where we've gone out and we've looked at those generational housing. A lot of it's in the West End where the only thing that a parent has to leave to their child is their home. And since those homes are some of the original homes built in Louisville, they're obviously some of the oldest ones, and that generational housing just keeps continuing to poison and poison and poison. A lot of those neighborhoods are high poverty areas, and they don't necessarily have the funds to go out and do the remodeling and the renovations and to cover the old wood siding with new siding, and then to maintain that once they do. So a lot of times, yes, paint works as a remediation, but it's not a permanent effort. Paint has to be restabilized, and even siding can come off depending on the weather. With all the tornadoes and horrible storms we have, there's absolutely houses where we have to worry about that lead being re-exposed.
Dr. Guinn, anything you would add?
Yeah, we pretend that redlining ended, or the effects of it ended, when redlining was formally banned in this country, but we are absolutely, at least in my opinion, still feeling the effects of that divestment from the Black community in West Louisville. We don't see the rates of lead poisoning in St. Matthews, where we have homes built before 1950. We're seeing this in West Louisville, in these neighborhoods where there was a purposeful divestment in the community based on race. So it's like a nuclear blast. Like, the blast is over, but the fallout still persists. And I firmly believe that's part of the reason we're still seeing this disparity in neighborhoods with lead poisoning and a disparity in race in Jefferson County.
So how is lead exposure tracked or measured in Louisville? Are we measuring environmental presence, confirmed poisoning, or both? How are we kind of keeping on top of that? Patrick, I'll have you take it.
Sure. We're doing both. We've got a vast program where we're checking children regularly. We ask every child to get tested, hopefully at least twice a year, generally when they turn 6 months, and then at 12 months, and then again at 18 and 24. We want to keep those tests coming, so we're getting those tests. The pediatricians are asking for them. Those results come to us at the health department, and they also go to our partners at the state. So we're getting that information for where the children are testing positive. We're also getting the pregnant people positives as well. And now we're also working with our partners over in code enforcement to kind of identify some of these houses out there that have this old paint on it so that we can reach out and offer services to help remediate those. So we're trying to do it every possible way we can, but it takes a village.
Yeah, truly. So I mean, like, how do you test for lead issues in your environment? Like, as an individual, what can you do, and what should you do if you find it? Dr. Guinn?
Well, identify the age of your house. If it was built before 1978, and really if it was built before 1950 and it's wood-sided home, there's companies you can hire to come out and do lead testing. You can call the health department. You can call Lead-Free Louisville and seek help there. John Cullen here in Louisville sells a product that you can spray on the side of your house, and it'll turn pink or purple if lead paint is present. I use it all the time. It's very sensitive to lead paint. That's how I test. That's how I tell my friends to test their homes. In terms of the water, I would turn to the Louisville Water Company to see if your home's at risk for having lead in the water. And then the soil, you would really need to hire a company to come out and test that for you.
Patrick, do you have any other resources?
The only other resource I would really recommend is the the state does have a agricultural soil testing program, so they can test that for you as well. Calling us at the health department is always an option. We were happy to come out, take a look at your property with you, walk you through where you might be finding lead contamination. And then there's also a list of contractors who are good at identifying and helping with remediating the lead issue as well that we have on our website.
Is lead something you can ever completely remove from your home, water, or soil, or is it just about managing the risk?
Yes, you can remove it. The removal is going to be a little more pricey than the remediation. That's what we find a lot in a property is the cost of remediation versus the cost of abatement. Abatement, it means you're getting the lead out. It's a heavy metal. It's not going anywhere unless you physically remove it from the property. There are absolutely places you can call and you can have them come out and give you an estimate on how much it is going to be to remediate, and they'll also give you an abatement cost. And generally, depending on what you can do, we recommend abatement as much as possible, because if you can get it out, then it's gone forever and you don't have to worry about it coming back unless you bring something back in your house that has lead contamination.
What resources or funding is currently available to help people make their homes or environments more lead safe, especially for those who maybe don't have that money or that kind of income to cover that removal?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we generally recommend people. Lead Safe Louisville right now has a grant that they've been operating off of for the last 5 years, and it helps they'll actually come out, they'll look at your property, they'll find if there's lead. They'll show you where the lead is, and then they can actually help remove it. It is based on some income specificities, but a lot of people, most people will actually qualify if they apply. And as far as that goes, we are always telling people, reach out to your local churches, your local community centers. There's lots of people out there who are willing to help. I used to work with code enforcement in the city. One of the first things I always did when I moved to a new area was to go out and to talk to my local churches and to my local community centers to see what kind of services they had, because invariably I'd find somebody who needed help with work on their house and they were either too old or they just didn't have the means to take care of it. So I would always try to find those resources. And like I said, it takes a village, and we do everything we can, and we want to make sure that as many people have help that need it.
And this question is, it's really for both of you. If you're aware, are there any new or proposed policies at the state level or local level that could help or hurt local efforts to reduce lead exposure? Dr. Guinn?
Yeah, so there is a pilot project going on with family health centers where they are doing universal prenatal blood lead screening in all pregnant people at their first prenatal visit. And those folks are being followed up if they screen positive. That's one thing locally. We're going to try to change the culture around lead poisoning in Louisville and around the country, really, with the work we're doing. We're really asking our community partners to think about lead poisoning as not just something that happens at 12 and 24 months, but something that can occur prenatally and extend through, your teenage years and beyond. And what U of L would like to do is really have the American College of Gynecology and the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program join forces and have a universal lead screening policy, so that there are no discrete entities working on the same thing, but having different ideas for how it should operate. So there's a lot of things we can do that we haven't done yet, but we are exploring those and working on those behind the scenes.
Very cool, like innovations, it sounds like, for testing. Patrick, being that this is a major issue locally, what are the city's current programs or policies around lead?
We've always focused on the child. We've tried to shift that focus to the environment because we would like to keep the child from getting sick in the first place. So we've been working with our partners over at Code Enforcement. We've trained all their staff, all their inspectors are now trained to be lead risk assessors. So they know when they go out that if there's a peeling and chipping window frame, that if it's going to contain lead or not. They take testers out with them now so they can identify the lead, and then they make those referrals to us, which is going to be a huge boon to the area, because before, just using the children as canaries in the coal mine is not going to get the change that we need to keep people from getting sick in the future. It does help short term, and it helps for anybody who moves into that place that they're living in after they leave. But like I said, a lot of these remediations are going to be temporary. If you put paint on a wall, that paint's only going to remain good as long as it's maintained.
Yeah. Do you know is there like an average amount of time, or is it sort of just like as it deteriorates, depending on weather you were talking about as well?
It's a couple things that it depends on. One is if it's a high impact surface like a door jamb or a door frame or a windowsill. Those obviously are going to get opened and closed, and there's going to be a lot of friction going on, which will create lead dust if there's lead underneath it. So it's going to go away a lot quicker. Anything that's low where children can reach it, obviously kids are putting their hands everywhere. Dogs flap their tails on them, and that's something people don't think about as well. If you've got lead dust in your house and you've got pets, then it's going to get on the pets, and then you're going to pet the dog, and you're going to take that lead dust and put it in you. So we always try to make sure everybody is aware of where the lead's going to be, because just because you paint it, generally if it's an indoor paint, we like to have that re-inspected about every 3 years. If it's an outdoor paint, about the same, but it's usually easier to tell on the outside. You can you'll notice if your paint's going bad on the outside faster than you will on the inside.
Dr. Guinn, I want to ask, I sort of forgot to ask this question really, but how easy is it to test yourself or your kids for lead poisoning?
It's really simple. You just go to your physician or your child's pediatrician and ask for a blood lead test, and they can do that right in the office with screening. And if it screens positive, they can take venous blood and send that to a lab and have the actual number identified. Right now, the CDC says anything greater than or equal to 3.5 micrograms per deciliter is considered elevated. Of course, we know anything greater than 0 is abnormal, but 3.5 is the threshold for what's considered abnormal, and we don't want to see those tests coming back greater than 0. So it's pretty simple to be tested. You just have to find a physician that will do it for you.
And like you said, just a reminder, at the lower level, it's about getting rid of the environmental risk. And then is it sort of just flush out of your system from there?
It does. It takes about a month in children for that blood to be halved, for that blood lead level to be halved. So let's say you have a really high exposure, your blood lead level is 50. It'll take about a month for that to come down to 25, and then another month for it to come down to 12.5. It takes about 4 to 5 months for the blood lead level to come all the way down. That's if you're not having repeated exposures. And that's the devil in the detail there, is we have kids that are being exposed in the environment repeatedly, and their body can't get all that lead out of there.
Thank you, Dr. Guinn. Patrick, Dr. Guinn, do you have any last pieces of advice before I let you go if someone might suspect they have lead poisoning in their home or environment? Patrick, I'll start with you.
Yeah, we're always saying that get your child tested, get your house tested. We have lots of opportunities to help at the health department. StopLeadLou.com is there. 574-6644 is our lead line. If you need help, reach out. We're happy to help. But please get your child tested, get your home tested.
Dr. Guinn?
Get tested. If you're planning to become pregnant, test your house. If you become pregnant, get tested at your first prenatal visit. And when you have children, get them tested annually.
Dr. Guinn, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us on Track.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Brian Guinn is a public health epidemiology professor at the University of Louisville and a lead poisoning researcher. And Patrick Rich is the executive administrator of the Environmental Health and Preparedness Division at Louisville Metro Public Health and Wellness. On Track is a production of Louisville Public Media. The On Track production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Alex Biscardi, and Laura Ellis. Our music is by Kojin Tashiro. If you're just tuning in and you want to hear the full show, you can find it now at LouisvilleOnTrack.org or in your favorite podcast app. And let's continue the conversation. Is there something you want to hear about? Something that matters to your Kentuckiana experience? Let us know by sending us a text or giving us a call at 502-814-TALK or send an email to ontrack@lpm.org. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and remember, being kind is free. That's the start of community. Until next time, you're on track with Louisville Public Media.
Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.